Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
Well, good afternoon. Bonjour. My name is Gord Johns. I'm the Member of Parliament for Courtenay, Alberni, and I am the proud critic for the NDP for small business and tourism. And before I get started, I want to acknowledge that I'm on the homelands of the Huipachesset and Sishat people in the Nuu-chah-nulth territory on Vancouver Island. And also I want to acknowledge, it would be remiss to get started without acknowledging the tragic loss of a young man in a shooting in the Tloquet Nation on the west coast of Vancouver Island. And we're all sending out our condolences and certainly our love while they're grieving this loss and looking for answers. Today, we're talking about small business and the challenges small businesses have faced since this pandemic started. It was just 2 weeks ago, and something unfathomable happened where they were asked to close their doors to protect public health. And small business owners obliged. They did the right thing. They stepped up to the plate, not knowing how they were going to pay their bills, scared, afraid of what might happen next. These are really the unsung heroes in my view in this pandemic. And as a former small business owner myself and someone who ran a chamber of commerce on Vancouver Island, I remember in 2008 when the economic crash happened, and the Conservatives at the time bailed out the big banks, they bailed out big corporations and CEOs, and they left small business owners and their employees high and dry. I didn't want to see that happen again. None of us wanted to see that happen again. And that doesn't even pale in comparison, 2008, to what we're dealing with right now in the greatest global economic crisis of our time. And, I called Jagmeet Singh and we had a conversation, and Jagmeet assured me that we were going to put workers and small businesses as a priority, and we weren't going to let this happen again. And we looked at what was happening around the world, where they were delivering really good programs for wage subsidies, for rent programs, support for the people living in their communities, and for small business owners. And we brought ideas back to the government, and they would roll out an idea like the rent program, which we brought to their attention. But it was flawed. It was landlord driven. It excluded the people that needed the help the most until we pressured them to fix it. The wage subsidy, they offered a wage subsidy of 10%. And clearly that wasn't enough. And we pressured the government to move that up to 75%. The CERB, so that people could actually buy groceries and feed their families, was, small business owners were going to be excluded initially from that and not given near enough to get by. So throughout this whole process and this difficult time, it's been our leader and the NDP working with us to fight for small business. And we're going to continue to do that. And it's a huge honor today to introduce the leader of the federal NDP, Jagmeet Singh, who's been with small business owners and their workers all the way along in this crisis. And we're going to talk about our bold plan to support small businesses as we continue through 2021 and years beyond to bring the support that they need. Because we know when we invest in small businesses now, we save the economy much more than losing these businesses and their employees. And this is a huge opportunity for us to get the government and get everybody to work together so that we can do the right thing and continue to put workers and small businesses as a priority. And that's what the NDP is going to be doing. Jagmeet, look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks so much, Gord. It's a huge honor to have you as our critic for small business tourism, also to represent the good people on Vancouver Island. You've been a powerful voice for not just small businesses and tourism, but also for people and workers. I really appreciate it. And I am really excited to talk to you today about our plan. As Gord laid out, we know that in this pandemic, it has hit people differently. We know that some of the biggest businesses, big banks, big corporations, the big box stores have done well, and some of them have actually made record profits. We know some of the web giants have done really well in this time. But while Justin Trudeau and the Liberals supported the big businesses, they let small businesses behind. And a lot of people are worried about what that means for their communities. When we think about a community, it's really the local community store, the coffee shop, the local business that makes that community special and vibrant. And those are the businesses that have been left behind. So we've got a plan that we're putting forward to actually support small business. In a time when big business seem to be getting all the help and small businesses have been left behind, we've got a plan to focus in on small business. So our plan is going to cover a lot of areas to support small businesses in a wide variety of ways. But I want to lay out 3 of the key pieces that will make a big difference for people right now. First of all, small businesses need some sense of predictability in the future. We know that this has been very uncertain times. So what we're proposing is, first off, to continue the existing supports. We know that small businesses need the wage subsidy to continue so they can keep their staff hired. We know that they need to continue to have rental supports. So we're going to fight to continue those existing programs. But to go further, we've got 2 additional pieces that we want to propose. One is, we know that credit card fees are a big cost for small business, and we want to put a cap on them, a cap of 1% on credit card fees. This would ensure that small businesses can see some relief, some support in this difficult time, and it's something we can absolutely do at the federal level. Thirdly, to support small businesses in the recovery to rehire or hire new workers, at the federal level, we are going to cover the EI and the CPP. This is our proposal to encourage and support small businesses to get back on their feet, to rehire and hire new workers. These are just some of the measures we want to put forward, but really we believe there needs to be a focus on small business, on helping those that have been hardest hit. And instead of what the Liberals have been doing, which is helping those at the very top, like the big banks, we want to focus on your local community businesses that need support. So that's some of our plan. And I'll just do that again in French, and then I'll pass it on to some of our validators. We are really excited that we've got some incredible women who are running very important businesses in their communities, and we're excited to introduce them as well, to ask for their input. So, ce qu'on a vu pendant ces pandémies, c'est le fait que les grandes entreprises ont gagné beaucoup. Ils ont reçu un appui du gouvernement libéral, mais en même temps, les petites entreprises ont fait face à des grands défis. On a vu les grandes entreprises comme Walmart qui continuent d'avoir des grands revenus, des grands profits, et les géants du web qui ont gagné des profits records. Et ils ont reçu des grands appuis du gouvernement libéral. Mais les petites entreprises ont fait face à des grands défis et on n'a pas vu une approche spécifique pour les petites entreprises. Donc, ce qu'on propose aujourd'hui, c'est des mesures spécifiques pour cibler les petites entreprises et pour les aider. On propose 3 éléments spécifiques maintenant et une approche plus large que Gord va expliquer aussi. Donc, ce qu'on va faire, premièrement, c'est de continuer les appuis qui existent, la subvention salariale, l'aide pour le loyer pour les entreprises. Deuxièmement, ce qu'on propose, c'est une limite sur les montants que les compagnies de cartes de crédit peuvent charger aux entreprises. Donc, on propose une limite de 1%. Et finalement, on va aider les petites entreprises quand ils embauchent des anciens travailleurs et des nouveaux travailleurs en aidant avec l'assurance emploi et aussi en aidant avec le CPP. Donc, ce sont des 3 éléments spécifiques et Gord va expliquer avec plus de détails qu'est-ce qu'on va faire pour aider les petites entreprises. Mais on sait que c'est essentiel de le faire. So, I'm excited about this plan. I'm excited to hear from our validators today. But before that, I'm going to pass it over to Gord to lay out some more details around how we are going to support small businesses in this difficult time. And really our approach, which is focused on those local small businesses that really make up our community, that are such an important part of a vibrant community. Gord, please give some more details about what we're proposing.
Sure. So really what small businesses want is they want certainty. They know that we know that they're going to need help to get through this. The hardest hit businesses, for example, they're going to need help with the wage subsidy. The hardest hit need a wage subsidy up to 85%. And they need that right through the summer of 2021. We're hearing that especially in the tourism sector and the hard hit sectors. The rent program up to 90% support, because some of them are going to take a long time to reboot. And we can think about many types of businesses in every community right across this country right now that have very little revenue or none. altogether, and it's going to take a while for them to bounce back. So ensuring that there's certainty to get to those small businesses is absolutely critical. The other thing is right now, if you you can't access a program, that make sure that there's someone to actually answer the phone and get them the help they need. For example, calling CRA right now, you're put in these long queues. You can't get the help they need. I have a business owner in my riding who owns a pizza business, and he can't get the SEBA loan because he bought cheese from local grocery stores, and he's bought over $40,000 of cheese, and they're not allowing him to get the loan, citing that he needed to buy from a supplier. Well, no family can eat $40,000 worth of cheese. So, I mean, there's lots of different things that we're talking about to ensure that people are getting the support they need. But we also need to make sure that we have incentives for people to rehire workers when it comes to the employer portion of their EI and their CPP, and ensuring that we're expanding the Canada Summer Jobs so that we can certainly put priority to Indigenous-led businesses and businesses that are underserved right now. So there's lots of work that needs to be done. But the thing that we don't talk enough about, and social supports, especially for those in my riding that I'm hearing from, they need affordable housing. They need a universal dental and Medicare plan to make sure that their employees get the support they need. And we know that many thousands of employees have been cut off from their benefits throughout this crisis. So these are priorities of small business owners, is getting these incredible and important supports that they need for themselves and for their employees. And this is what the NDP is talking about, ensuring that we take a holistic approach when we talk about small businesses.
Thanks so much, Gord. Really appreciate it. And I should also let folks know, I'm really excited to be here in a small business in Surrey at Just Bakes Cake Shop, Just Bakes Bake Shop. We're here in Surrey, and the owner is Ravina Oberoi. She's been kind enough to let us set up here, but just to showcase an example of the incredible businesses that we need to support. So now I'd like to ask Tracy Kettle to provide some of her insight as a small business owner. Please introduce yourself, Tracy, and let folks know about your thoughts.
Hi there. Actually, as a small business owner, actually particularly coming from the Indigenous tourism sector, I'm actually really excited to see the thought that's been put into the smaller businesses, because I truly do believe we are the backbone to the country. And, any small business, like the trickle-down effect, even if you're a small guy, the trickle-down effect is really huge in building our economy. And for Indigenous tourism in particular, there's so many benefits with that. And it has been a challenging time for a lot of operators. So to see some of your thoughts in here, I think are really, really wonderful. Especially, when you're talking about the wage program, because I feel like right now people just really want to get back to work right now. And it's frustrating for a lot of us operators because you really want to bring your staff back. It's been really devastating for people to kind of be sitting at home, just wanting to get back out there and working. And with what we're doing, I mean, there's, it's economically there's benefits, but also, with our youth, being able to kind of keep working, we're building bridges. We're instilling pride in, who they are, and, giving them kind of like a purpose again. And, we were kind of really starting to pick up steam with Indigenous tourism before this all hit. And I've seen so many amazing benefits. And I think kind of with these supports that you have in place, it's really wonderful, like to kind of get that recognition and the understanding that we are an important part of this sector, and we're an important part of the economy as well. And it looks, so many things that are covered too, are kind of really, really key, and really, really helpful. a lot of Indigenous operators, particularly grassroots businesses, they have a way to go. And I mean, things that larger companies or other businesses kind of come really naturally, are a lot of grassroots Indigenous tourism businesses. They face a lot of barriers. And the plan seems to really address a lot of these, which I think is really, really great. Kind of looking at things like rent and housing for workers. I think that's wonderful. I personally love, again, I think I already mentioned this earlier, but I love the fact that you're talking about a wage subsidy, because I would really like to see more businesses getting their staff back. And I think there's definitely room for discussion with some of the things like Indigenous businesses with financial institutions. That's a huge barrier to a lot of us in many, many ways. And I think that's something that could be discussed a lot further. It's just, I think it's a great platform. And I think there's been lots of consideration and lots of in-depth looking at kind of issues that kind of get swept under the rug sometimes. So.
Thanks so much, Tracy. And again, Tracy runs an Indigenous tourism business in Mountain View in Alberta. Thank you for being here today. And thank you for highlighting also the specific part of our plan where we want to provide more supports to Indigenous businesses and entrepreneurship. I think there's absolute need for that. So thank you so much, Tracy, for being here. And now I want to pass the mic over to Sandra Viney. Sandra is also a small business operator, and I'm really excited for her to share her story about her business, which has been operating for a long time. It's a big part of the community. Please, Sandra, talk about your business also and talk about your thoughts on this plan.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation. So I'm a co-owner of Atlas Cafe, which is in beautiful downtown Courtenay in the Comox Valley. We've been serving the good people for 25 years. We're heading into our 26th anniversary in April. Would I have known that our 25th year would have us with our doors closed? It was very challenging. If we go back to mid-March for us, laying off 42 people, we have a team, Atlas family. We have servers that have been with us for over 20 years, a couple of chefs that are over 21 years within these 25 years. So we have 42 people that really are our family. And having to lay them off was one of the hardest career positions I've ever been in, with the uncertainty of return. I can't emphasize enough how much gratitude I have. We have as an organisation to the government for the wage subsidy and for the rent assistance. We clearly would not be in operations today without this lifeline. This support has been essential. I could talk on a personal aspect because I know my team. The SERB was critical and essential for their survival also. It came at a time of such uncertainty. We have a lot of single parents, a lot of small families that are raising their children, and the stress and the fear was very palpable. We relaunched back in June. We went and pivoted like everybody else did, turning our business plan upside down to see how we could reinvent ourselves. It initially came out on an online with the takeout options, and then we returned to table service in June with a very limited staff. We are now down to just 29 staff. We have had to change our menus to condense it to the COVID way of life, which makes it more friendly for online takeout. We've got some amazing people within our community that understand the concept of supporting local. When we had the public health order come down in November, it constricted us in our capacity and how we could go about serving our community. One of our pride of place is the fact that we are table service. And in table service, this is our living art. It's art on the food, the love and passion that's put behind what we present. But really, we are, like mentioned, we are a thread of the fabric of the community. So to hear the hustle and bustle of a restaurant or a cafe, it is where we meet our people. It is a lifeline also. And so to have this constriction of limitations as we comply to the regulations with less capacity, December was not like normal. There was no companies celebrating their staff. There was no families gathering. And we really went in the red. But if it wasn't for our beautiful community who understood that the best gift to give was gift certificates, to give people an experience to support local community, that was just something that still makes me quite teary, seeing how people know how to rally up. I've been very proud of our industry, our sector, and when we closed in mid-March, we all were sitting on a lot of inventory that was fresh produce, fresh prepped food that was going to be spoiled. Never in our career have we been told to just shut. And there was a lot of waste that could have happened, but through the Comox Valley Food Policy Council, which I sit on, and association with Lush Valley, we were able to connect with all the other restaurateurs to make sure that that produce and product was able to get to the most vulnerable within our community. And if it wasn't for Lush Valley, we wouldn't, and the Food Policy Council in collaboration, we were able to mobilize a hot food meal program and a food hamper program, because what was happening within that first week of closure, a lot of agencies weren't able to feed their most vulnerable. So we were able to mobilize. And so out of the silver lining of all these challenges, and we still don't know what the future beholds. So I just am grateful that we've got a heart in this community that know how to look after our most vulnerable, and that they have rallied together, and that I can be a spokesman today to just remind everybody that those cafes and those eateries are the heartbeat of your community. And you do need to show up in any capacity that you can, if you can, because we are facing some challenges and support is essential. And I just want to thank you for your platform. I'm really excited to see that you did also put the credit card charges in, because this is a layer that has just added to fixed costs that make it essential for us to move forward. So again, thanks, gentlemen and ladies.
Thanks. Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Sandra. And thank you, Tracy, again, for being here and for sharing your experiences and for talking about how this platform could support businesses like your own. And Sandra really touched on the importance of supporting local businesses. It's so vital. Sandra's has been there for the community for almost 3 decades and has been a big part of the community, a very vibrant part of it. And that's what everyone's community represents. Tracy's is exactly that, a part of the community, and it really reflects the people there, and we want to support them. So thank you so much. Un grand merci à tout le monde qui est ici. Just want to, again, in closing, and before we pass it over to Nina, who will then manage the questions from media, again, we really want to support our small businesses. We've seen Justin Trudeau focus on big businesses. We've seen help for banks. We've seen no really attempt to go after the wealthiest web giants who've made record profits, but all the while small businesses have been struggling and been suffering. We want to see a clear and focused approach to supporting small business. I'm here from a small business in Surrey, Just Bakes, a bake shop. So I'm excited to be able to talk to you all from a small business to support one locally. And now I'd like to pass the mic over to Nina, who's going to manage the questions that are going to be coming from media. Nina.
Thank you very much, Jagmeet. Merci beaucoup. Donc, pour les médias qui auraient une question, je vous inviterai d'utiliser la fonction lever la main. So for media, for any questions from media, I invite you to use the raise hand function to ask your question. So we will go ahead and start with Peter from CBC. Please go ahead.
Jagmeet, can you hear me? Great. I just want to make sure I understand the measures that you outlined today.
Sure.
Just so I got them right first, and then I have a question on them, and then there's a follow-up. So you want the wage subsidy increase to 85% and it to last throughout the summer, rent subsidy up to 90%. You want affordable housing for workers of small businesses, expanded summer jobs program, universal dental care for small businesses. Is that right? You want to cap credit card fees at 1%, and you want to pay the EI and CPP fees for small businesses. Yes?
Yes. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, the paying the EI and CPP, for how long a period of time would that be?
So for the EI and the CPP, we want to support in the rehiring and the hiring in the recovery period. So we want to put this forward as a plan, working with small businesses. We'll strategize what's the best way in terms of how long this should last, but we know that the recovery is going to last some time. So in order to support businesses through this recovery, we're proposing this as a measure, and we want it to be something predictable in the long term to help small businesses get back on their feet. So we're proposing this to start off right away as an immediate measure that we would cover it. And we want to put this plan in place for as long as we need to help businesses get back on their feet.
How are you proposing this plan? Are we going to see legislation, a small members bill? Are you just announcing it and hoping the Liberals are going to agree to everything and do it? How are you putting this forward to the government?
Certainly. So this is our plan of what needs to be happening. And we are proposing this publicly, and we want to build a movement around this, acknowledging that people are worried about their small businesses and want to see support. So we are encouraging encouraging the government, the Liberal government, to take our approach. And we'll look at different ways to push this forward. We know that there'll be negotiations coming up around the supports, and the Liberal government has needed our support in order to bring forward changes. We have been the ones that fought to increase the wage subsidy from 10% as it was introduced to 75%. We want to see increases to sectors that have been hard hit, like tourism. And we want to acknowledge that small businesses have been ignored by this Liberal government. There hasn't been a specific approach. So we're laying out our vision for what we would do, and we're going to encourage the Liberal government to follow suit.
And just my last question, if you don't mind. You have mentioned before that the Liberal government is not helping small businesses, but is helping big businesses. Can you give me an example of a policy that only helps big businesses, but doesn't also help small businesses that you would like to see done away with?
Certainly. We saw right in the beginning of the pandemic that big banks, the large major banks in Canada, received massive supports from the Liberal government. Those same banks turned around and made record profits. So we've got the biggest banks in Canada making record profits, receiving massive supports from the government that specifically went specifically and were targeted to the big banks. That approach was a massive amount of money that was underwritten, a massive and significant contribution that supported big banks that went on to make record profits, but there wasn't that same approach given to small businesses to acknowledge they were hard hit. We've seen that a lack of precision with policies has meant that big box stores like Walmart's and Costco's have continued to do well. In fact, in many cases make record profits. We've seen Amazon make record profits, but no attempt to make sure they pay their fair share. And in the inverse or in the converse, we've seen small businesses, local shops that have had to shut down. 1 in 10 small businesses have had to shut down, and we're worried that they may never open again. So there's been a disproportionate attention given to big businesses and policies that have helped them, and an ignoring of small businesses and their unique nature, and a lack of precision with supports that would actually help them out.
Thank you very much. I just want to remind media, if you have a question, to please use the raise hand function. Je rappelle aux médias que si vous avez une question, d'utiliser la fonction lever la main. Next, I have Libertium from the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Sorry, I had to push that unmute button. Thanks for chatting with us today, sir. I was going to ask you, first of all, about what you expect the cost of the EI and CPP contributions would be, but I guess you don't know that number at the time, considering we don't know how long that would potentially last.
That's right. This is a commitment, just acknowledging that small businesses have been hard hit and that we need to specifically give some help to small businesses and tie that help to getting workers rehired. So covering the CPP and EI for rehires and new hires is a way to support small business, a specific and targeted way to do that. It's also a way to help people get back to work. And we'll work on costing out these measures, but these are things that would specifically be focused on helping small businesses get back to full stride and also get back the workers that they need to continue to do the work they do.
And you have talked about a bit of a profit tax, something along those lines for quite a while now. One of the questions is what kind of percentage of tax you'd be looking at? More details on that. How would you determine which companies are making profit off the pandemic? Would you be looking at income tax returns, revenue over year on year? What can you provide more detail on this plan?
Certainly. Our pandemic profiteering tax that we talked about is very much modeled after what countries did around the world during the world wars, when there was a profiteering tax applied to businesses that were just in the right place at the right time, or those that were aggressively profiteering that made record profits. Some of the ways that it was done in the past was to look at revenue, compare the revenue with previous years. We know that with quickly we can assess that companies like Amazon have made record profits. We know that Walmart's have made massive profits. So we look at the profits businesses have made, compare them to previous years, and factor in potential some growth. But there's companies that are making massive increases. Some of the web giants, some of the large corporations have made incredible profits, and they should be contributing their fair share. What we've looked at in the past is looking at an increased tax rate on the profit above what is normal, what they would normally be making in this time. For a company that's profited off the pandemic significantly, they should pay more. And so we looked at measures like doubling the corporate tax rate on the amount of tax or the amount of profit over what is normal, but adjusting that as well. There's ways to adjust that to make sure it does the job. And in the past, with the wartime profiteering measures, that number was adjusted to get to the right point. And so we're open to that as well. But the goal is, let's make sure when it comes down to who pays for this pandemic, it should be the big businesses that have profited. It should be those at the very top. It shouldn't be small businesses that have suffered. It shouldn't be working people. There should be an acknowledgement that there are some that have done really well and others that have suffered. Those who've done really well should be in the position to contribute to the recovery and to this pandemic.
Thank you very much. Next, I have Mr. Grant Warkentin. If you can identify your media outlet, please, and go ahead with your question. Thank you. Mr. Warkentin, you are still on mute if you haven't unmuted.
Apologies there. Is that working now?
It is indeed.
Thank you for that. Sorry about that. My question is for both Jagmeet and Gord Johns. Hundreds of small businesses in the Courtenay-Alberni riding in aquaculture are struggling through COVID, but recently the Liberal government also announced more salmon farm shutdowns starting next year. This will hurt small trucking companies, net repair companies, high-tech startups, local grocery stores, and coastal communities. How will you help them, these small businesses, as they're dealing with the 1-2 punch of COVID and the Liberal government shutting them down?
Certainly. I really appreciate the question. I've been in conversation with Rachel Blaney, who's deeply worried about this as well as with Gord Johns. We know that there is a lot of pain that's going to be impacting workers. And so what we're calling on the federal government to do is to put in place a relief program for workers that have been specifically impacted. Similar to what we saw when coal workers were impacted in southern Alberta, that there was a program federally that was providing support. We need to find ways to support workers that are going to be hard hit by this decision and find ways to encourage investments in the local economy to offset some of these job losses. These are people and that are struggling and they need support. And so we are going to fight to make sure these workers get help.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Grant, could you please just identify your media outlet, please?
Yeah, it's the Raven 100.7 FM CKCC.
Amazing. Thank you very much. I would like to remind journalists, if you have a question, to please use the raise hand function at the bottom of the page. Si vous avez des questions, je vous inviterai à utiliser la fonction lever la main. So I have someone from Vista Radio. If you can please identify yourself and go ahead, ask your question. Thank you.
Good morning still here on Vancouver Island. It's Patty
Yes.
Murray. Vista Radio, we have got 6 radio stations on Vancouver Island and the Sunshine Coast. Thank you so much for the opportunity for a chat today. We cover a lot of the smaller markets where small businesses really are struggling to survive and have for many years in the transition to big box and shopping online. And really COVID has been kind of another nail in the coffin for a lot of them. I'm wondering if you might address specifically Where do you see the opportunities for small business on Vancouver Island and the Sunshine Coast going forward, even during the rest of COVID and beyond that? Are we really moving into an area where these small businesses, we're just going to expect to see less of them and do our shopping online? I mean, we can talk about how we feel about that, but is that really the direction for small business in the future here on the West Coast?
Well, what we're trying to say is no. We want to see communities have vibrant small businesses. And the reality is, if you ask anybody, their pride and joys of a community, it's their local restaurant, their local coffee shop, the local businesses that give that community its special feel. Big box stores don't create that same experience, and online shopping is not going to replace the feeling you get when you're in your community, in your local main street, walking around and connecting with people. So what we're trying to do is acknowledge that you're right to ask the question, because policies have driven more and more business and support towards the big box and online, and it's directly hurt small businesses. One concrete example is Amazon, which has made record profits in this pandemic and has made profit off the backs of people across Canada, including Vancouver Island, pays virtually no tax in Canada. So naturally, you got a company that pays no tax in Canada competing against local businesses. They're going to be in an advantage. Effectively, what the government is doing is giving them a subsidy. It's subsidizing businesses like Amazon by not making them pay their fair share, and that's the wrong thing to do. And that's part of what we're saying today, is that we want to see a clear approach that supports and focuses on small businesses. We can actually build a climate that makes small businesses thrive, and we're talking about some of those policies that will help. But we also need to include taxation, that the big businesses that make profits off the backs of Canadians that are not paying their fair share, in many cases not paying anything, have to start paying their fair share. And we need that to be a part of the plan. We also need to acknowledge that Canadians want to see small businesses thrive. So we've got a series of plans here of proposals that will specifically help small business. And that's something we need to do. I think Canadians want to see that happen. And every community takes pride and joy in what they offer locally. That's what we've got to support.
Thank you. May I ask a follow-up?
Yes, please.
I appreciate it. And, every community will say that they are unique. So, but here on Vancouver Island, we really think we are unique. I have to share that I saw crocuses blooming on my walk yesterday. So
amazing.
Nice. So what can people who live on the West Coast, because that's my audience, or people across Canada, what can we do besides voting with our dollars? What do you think we can do to support these efforts to save our small businesses, other than the polls and other than, go shop there? Is there anything we can do to support you and support the efforts to save our small businesses?
Absolutely. Write letters to MPs and write letters to political parties across the country to let them know that you care about small business. We want to make sure this is raised as an issue. We want to build a movement for people to share their stories of why their small businesses matter to them. Share those stories with us. Let us know at the New Democratic Party why your small business matters to you. Those stories are powerful, and it reminds people why they're so important. So sharing stories, putting out the fact that you care, let that be known. Write letters to the Prime Minister's office. Let people know that you care about your small business. And voting is important. Voting for parties that are thinking about small business. I put it out there that New Democrats are focused on small business, so consider that when you go to the polls. But it is important for us to look at ways that we build the right climate for small business. And I can't highlight enough that the current approach that's been taken at the federal level by both Conservatives and Liberals has been one where they have effectively subsidized the biggest businesses by not making them pay their fair share. It is a subsidy when Amazon gets to operate in Canada and not contribute to the rest of society the way other businesses would do. That is an unfair advantage that they have. We want to stop that. We want to make sure that they're paying their fair share. We also want specific policies targeted to small business. That's what we've got to do. We achieve the outcomes that our choices dictate. And so far, Liberals and Conservatives have made choices that have not helped small business. We want to make different choices that actually focus on those local communities that are so special. And I also agree, there is something very special about Vancouver Island. And those small businesses are a big part of why it's so special. And we want to support them.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to do a last check on our list here. If you have a question, I would invite you to use the raise hand function at the bottom of the page. Je fais juste un dernier retour. Si vous avez une question, je vous inviterai d'utiliser la fonction lever la main au bas de la page. Je ne vois pas d'autres questions, Jagmeet, alors je remets le micro à toi.
Okay, thank you once again. I want to just again shout out Sandra Viney, who operates an amazing spot in Courtenay, and for your experience as a restaurateur, as a cafe. Thank you for sharing your experiences and how important it is to support local. Tracy, who operates a tourism, an Indigenous-owned and led tourism operation out of Mountain View in Alberta. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. And of course, Gord Johns, our critic for tourism and small business, as well as an additional incredible MP on Vancouver Island. Thank you so much, Gord, for being here. And I'm just here with at a location, at a small business, talking about how important it is to support small businesses. Again, thanks to Just Cakes Bake Shop for letting us use the space. And thank you for caring about small business. It's a big part of our local community, and we are here to fight for you and support you. Donc encore un grand merci à vous tous. Et je veux encore vous rappeler que nous, les néo-démocrates, on est là pour défendre et protéger nos petites entreprises. Ils font une partie essentielle de nos communautés et on est là pour vous. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.